Welcome back to the Skits and Giggles podcast. My name is Pascal, and today I'm not joined by Bryson. Today I'm joined by Darren Mace. How's it going, mate?
Good, thank you. Managed to dry out a little bit.
Exactly. That would have been my next question. How are you recovering from the Grischa trail dive?
Yeah, muscles are holding up. Had a good night's sleep after we finished on the last day. No aches and pains. It's always good when you're my age.
Very good. And I guess the kit is still wet, as is mine. I did use the football boot dryer of my son to get some of my kit dry again, but other parts are still pretty wet.
Mine's all hanging up in the attic.
Okay, what I want to do today is, first I want to lay out a little bit why we sit down. I think one of the coolest things that has come out of the podcast is the intertwining of the virtual of the podcast with the reality of meeting people outside in the real world and hanging out and having some cool experiences on the bike. And we've had a number of those at this stage, chief amongst which the Grischa trail ride this year as well as last year. And I think it would be interesting to compare and contrast notes so our listeners can get a feeling for the event, how it really is, and maybe we can illustrate it with a couple of fun anecdotes here and there. So why don't we start with the simple question? What made you come back to the Grischa trail ride this year?
It was just such an awesome event last year. I couldn't not come back. The first thing me and Gianmarco said, Gianmarco being the guy that's in my team, one of my neighbours, first thing we said when we finished last year was, we got to go again. And we've got to try and get a better place than we did last year, because even though it's a little bit of fun, it still brings out that little bit of competitive spirit in you. And it's a great competition where even average people like me, can still compete to a certain extent, and you can have ambitions to get a certain place without it being overly serious like it would be if it was a pure race.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm was part of the event with the same team as well. We obviously have a slightly different setup. So I'm with my two best friends from back at university. They are somewhat experienced riders, but not quite as experienced as others. But we made it work, and that's exactly what makes this event so special. Maybe before we continue, we should lay out a little bit how the event works. Do you want to take a stab at that?
Okay, I can give it a go. So it's a 3-day trail riding event. Each day you get 6 hours to ride. And the night before each day, you get given a map. That map has lots of different trails marked on it, and every trail has a points value. Your goal in your team is to ride as many of those trails and collect as many points as you can in 6 hours. Simple as that. Points at the end of 3 days all get added up, and you get a list from first all the way down to 31st as it was this year.
Absolutely. So that's basically all the magic that is to the event. We also have to mention that it takes place in some of the nicest areas that Switzerland has to offer. It all takes place, as the name implies, in the Grisons. Chiefly amongst those destinations is Davos, Lenzerheide, and Arosa. They are all relatively close to each other, so they can be linked up in easy ways, be it by train or direct crossing over passes or with gondolas. I guess if we compare the two events, because we've both done with the same setup, the two editions in 2023 and in 2022, if we compare them, I guess the main difference from my perspective was, of course, that the order of the locations was a bit different. What else was different this year for you?
I guess the biggest difference was something we forgot to mention when we were talking about the setup is that every day, every morning, the organizers try and throw a spanner into the works by giving you a bonus trail that's worth double points. And last year, the bonus trail was always part of what we planned in advance. And this year, it wasn't the case. So this year, we were having to do a little bit more planning on the go.
But also, what is interesting is, of course, now comparing a few of those events, and they used to organize a different event as well. It was only located in Davos. Is that they, between the different editions, they changed the trails that you can ride. They obviously changed the arrangement between the locations. Of course, the weather sometimes throws a little spanner, or a big spanner as it was this time around, into the works. Um, and it leaves a lot of room to play, I guess. If you look at the different teams, how they approach their days in terms of the riding and how much they ride, where they ride, and how they use the gondolas and funiculars, etc. That's where the real differences are. Um, Maybe in simple terms, can you explain how you went about planning your days, giving all the restrictions of gondolas, time, trails, which ones are giving you points and which ones don't?
Basically, our plan was to ride trails we'd never ridden before and hopefully combine that with trails that were worth a lot of points. It was interesting. This year round, we only rode 2 trails that we rode on the whole 3 days of last year. Every other trail was different. So it's part exploring, riding places we've never ridden before, and trying to combine that with a sensible route that will get us a load of points, and most importantly, get us to the finish on time. Because last year we failed to get to the finish on time twice, and this year we were on time on every single day.
Okay, which is much, much better than me and my team. We've managed to not only be late once, but we've managed to be late for 3 consecutive days in the Grischa trail ride competition. 2 times last year, and 1 time very, very significantly on the first day this time around. And so that is something that has to be kept in mind. All those points, they are great. If you ride all the trails, you get the bonus trail, you link up all the gondolas, all of that. But there is also the time limit, and that's really what people forget. The time limit and the time penalty with it is pretty steep. And I think we had one of the highest deductions, I guess, in this year and the last year's editions, with 500-point deduction, which was 50 minutes late on the first day this year. So that can throw a little spanner in the works.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the hardest aspects, is trying to get that timing right, trying to get to the goal, trying to get to the finish without being too early or too late. I mean, on the first day this year, we completely miscalculated. We were there 45 minutes too early, with very few options for any other trail to ride to use up that time. Day 2, I think we hit it just about perfect, 2 minutes to spare. After 6 hours, I reckon that's a pretty good result.
Oh, absolutely. Maybe they should introduce, as a novelty next year, they should introduce an exchange between the different teams where you can trade time slots. So we could have used your 45 minutes from the first day for our being late and managing to get lost 3 times in 500 meters an hour away from the finish. Okay. But I guess what we also have to mention is that this happens on open trails, so this is not a closed race course. What that means is that you're also faced with gondolas that have other users using them, so that could mean that you're in line. That's also something that can happen, or you miss a bus, or you miss a train, or something like that. Have you built contingencies in your plans, or were you lucky? Were you just lucky and you never had to?
We always try and build some contingency into our plan. I use the Komoot app to plan the routes, and it gives you an estimation of how long it should take you to ride certain sections. And for 6 hours, I think we were usually planning somewhere between 4.5 hours of riding, the other hour and a half for lifts and contingencies.
Okay. You were this year and last year, you were kind of around the top 10, just outside of the top 10, if I remember.
Just outside.
Just outside. Oh, that's terrible. But if you compare kind of your days and how you rode and compare that to like the best teams, what are the main differences between, let's say, your strategy and like the absolute winners, the top of the crop?
I don't know. There's a big difference in strategy. It's just a big difference in fitness. that ultimately, the guys that are winning are doing routes that I could never get round in the 6 hours you've got. Because no matter how carefully you try and plan it, if you want to get some decent points, you've got to do some of those trails with some climbs on it. And that's where these guys are killing me. They're flying up these climbs and I'm plodding up like an old steam train.
Okay, but let's talk about more about like the team setup, right? Because obviously there's teams that are, an elite squadron of super fit racer types. Where on the scale from the elite squadrons to total Joe Blow, where would you rank your team, and how did your team look like?
I'm convinced I've got to be one of the slowest climbers out there.
I can confirm.
Thanks. my partner, he's Gianmarco. He's definitely a better climber than me. But I think we're pretty decent on the downhills. We're not
confirm.
We're not the fastest, but I've got good downhill stamina. So I mean, this year we went from the Rotorn to our Rosa without stopping. It was the only way we got to the goal on time. And I certainly know from seeing some of the other guys on the trail that they were having to stop and take breaks on the downhills. So right at the bottom on the uphill, somewhere indicative of where we finished off, sort of in the top half when it comes to the downhills, probably.
Me, on the other hand, so we were a pretty mixed group. So I guess okay uphill as well as downhill. My two friends, they are more casual riders. One of them, Dennis, he comes off a 1-year injury where he was pretty much off the bike. He only rode his road bike for half hour slots every once in a while. A lot of physio, but generally no mountain biking, and we could definitely feel that there's two types of fitness that you kind of need for this event, or a lot of these kind of events. Is on the one hand, yes, it's, let's say, the pedaling fitness, the uphill fitness, long climbs, all these kind of things. But there's also the downhill fitness, and it's just, if you've just been training on your road bike and then for a year, and then you throw yourself into an event like that, then you will feel your arms and hands and shoulders and back and all these kind of things pretty quickly. And as it was, that was becoming one of the bottlenecks, certainly on the second day. Whereas on the first day, it was more the pedaling fitness that was getting to the end. But yeah, so it's kind of different types of riders, different types of riding style, different types of fitness guys, or kind of also approaches to an event like that. And I think that's what makes it so interesting and appealing, is that you can come to this event, you can have a great experience, you can have a lot of fun. If you want to challenge for the top spots, you can. So you better bring your fittest friends. But if you just want to have a great time, no one stops you from just enjoying, just picking the loveliest trails, only the ones that you've never seen. And as long as you show up on time, you'll still be in the ranking at some stage.
Yeah, I mean, there's something in it for absolutely every rider. I'm truly convinced of that. It is. I think it's just one of the best formats around.
Yeah, no, it's certainly very unique, and I've never seen it somewhere else outside of Switzerland, or the Grisons, for that matter. Are you familiar with other formats like that?
I've never seen anything like it. It's a genius idea. And I think it's an idea that they could export if they really wanted to. There's got to be other amazing places where you could do something really similar.
Absolutely. I'm thinking certainly France, around the main ski valleys. There you should be really able to do something very, very similar. Mm-hmm. It also has to be said, this was the 17th edition, so it's not like it's a brand new format.
No, but I think it'd be really interesting actually to speak to them and see whether they came up with the idea or whether they stole it from someone themselves. Who knows?
We should ask Ollie and Baba about this.
For sure.
Right. Another important question. How did the risk to fun to scoring points ratio figure in your planning? How are you picking routes, trails, also only for the fun? The problem is, where do these trails lead to? If you cut them short, they don't give enough points. But if you take the full route, they're too long and you may miss a bus or something like that. Did you ever have any challenges with that?
There's two things I think figured into our planning a lot. There's a little bit of ambition there. We want to score some points, so high points value was definitely right up there when it came to the criteria we were looking at. And the second one is splitting out the climbing. Not giving ourselves too much climbing to do all at once, trying to spread it out over the day, and finding a route that I know I can finish within the time, not being overly ambitious. And if you do that, there's so many trails out there, you're bound to ride some fun trails. I mean, it's just not possible not to ride amazing trails. We definitely were picking trails with high points because, at the end of every day, they do that little roundup and, the top two teams, this is the route they take. And almost every time, Rolly says, so it's quite clear if people wanted to score well, they needed to take trail X or Y. And every time we'd taken that trail.
Yeah.
So
okay.
There's definitely certain trails that make a massive difference to how you score.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It also has to be said, on the trail sheet that you get for your planning session the night before, it does indicate not only the difficulty of the trail, so what you have to expect. Is it like a simple alpine road? Is it an easy flow trail? Is it a challenging single track? Is it like super sketchy, gnarly, very, very hard single trail? That's all indicated. And that's what I wanted to say before with the planning is that it also indicates the up meters and the down meters. And certainly on the first day, we haven't taken into account enough the up to down meter ratio, let's put it that way. And I guess on the second day, we definitely favored the down meters. So we basically ranked all the trails by the down meters and then removed all the ones with too many up meters and then just wrote those that we could line up nicely with a combination, of course, of stuff that we haven't written before.
It sounds like a very, very sound plan. If only that had been possible on day 3.
Okay. Before we get to day 3, because that was a special case, and we'll talk about that shortly. I guess if we wanted to summarize what is the secret sauce for success at the Grischa Trail Ride, what would be your top 3 things be, apart from fitness that we've already mentioned?
Tires that are resilient to punctures. There's a lot of sharp rocks out there. You don't want to be wasting your time with punctures. Either some sort of heavy-duty casing or cushcore would be my recommendation.
Or both.
Or both, yeah. Good spirit. You've got to go out there to have fun, and no matter how hard things get, because there's bound to be the odd occasion when things get a bit tough, it's no time for a sense of humour failure. You definitely need to bring your sense of humour with you.
Which is a beautiful segue into day 3 of the Grischa Trail Ride 2023. So can you explain to us, what was the problem?
Well, it only rained once.
Pretty consistently between Saturday when we finished and Sunday when we arrived at home.
Yeah. I have never got so wet on a cycle ride in my entire life. It was character building. I think that's the best way to describe it. It was a mammoth climb. Mammoth for me. Was it 800-900 meters or something? I don't know, something like that. Enough. And then as I reached the top of the climb was when it started raining harder. It was, I was in two minds about whether I really wanted to do it. I'll be honest with you. The evening before, there was a lot of conversation about, public transport. Maybe that's the option. We can go from Arosa to Davos via public transport in 2 hours. Maybe that's better than riding up over the pass. And I think there was maybe a third of the teams either took public transport or just dropped out when they saw the weather because it was that nasty. It was an experience. When it's raining that much, those little mountain streams turn into gushing torrents, and there's no bridges to cross them. Yeah, exciting.
Yeah, it was quite something, that's for sure. I guess we have to date it. It was the weekend of the 26th of 27th of August. We've had some of the most terrible rain in the Alps in a very, very long time. And unfortunately, quite in that time is when we had to cross back from Arosa to Davos. And on a piece of paper, normally there are two main routes that you can take back to Davos from Arosa. One of those was closed because, of course, the weather situation was too dangerous. And the other one is just a very long, very long climb over a high plateau with a lot of cows and deep puddles, which was, I guess, one of the funniest anecdotes of Sunday was seeing guys thinking they're being pretty clever by taking shortcuts over the meadow, and then misjudging puddles, and then sinking their entire front wheel into a puddle, going head over into the biggest puddle and taking a proper mud bath. So that was quite something. So there's a reason, guys, why hiking trails are marked and why you should generally stick to them.
Yeah, I mean, even then, we were crossing some of those streams almost knee deep in water.
Yeah,
just taking a good run up at it and hoping there was something we could ride through, and it worked. So that was definitely a positive.
But yes, it was character building. It was a challenge, but it was also a great feeling once we did it. We did some good equipment planning in terms of a lot of plastic bags, a lot of rubber gloves, swapping gloves at the top, putting on additional base layers for the way down, because of course it's the Alpine, and of course the temperatures are dropping. So the snow line was coming down quite significantly, and I think at the top it was only like 3-4 degrees, which obviously when you're wet to the bone is not much fun.
No. I think probably the best bit of equipment I had with me was a rain jacket with a hood that went over the helmet. That was worth its weight in gold, even if it wasn't very heavy. Just to have a dry head and not be rained on your head makes such a massive difference. I had to take the helmet off a couple of times, change the battery in the camera, and it was instantly freezing. So if anybody's thinking of going riding in the rain, get yourself a rain jacket with a hood that goes over the top of your helmet. You will be thankful.
Fully agree. Okay, but we can't leave it on that. We can't leave it on that low light. So if you look back on those two editions that you've done, what are some of the highlights?
So many highlights. So many highlights. Last year, riding the Kalbasas trail in Davos. I'd never ridden it before. What an amazing trail. Really, really satisfying. And just always the people. That's the real highlight. The people you meet. So many people we met last year were there this year, and you just pick up that friendship like you'd seen each other yesterday. I think that's probably what makes it more than anything else, is the people sharing all your stories in the bar in the evening, over dinner. For me, that's probably the best bit about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's, so sharing the experience of conquering this challenge together is obviously a special bond, and people connect over stories. And of course, an event like that is exactly what happens. And it is really cool to come back to these people and have, pretty much the same experience again. And, but yeah, it was for sure. I mean, obviously the riding is top notch. There is something for everyone in terms of trails. I know Davos very well. But it was always, I personally find it really interesting to explore other areas that I don't know quite as well. So Lenzerheide has always been kind of like, okay, bike park, but I've never really explored the areas outside. And all the entire area towards Ruhr is kind of a blank canvas for me that I'm yet to explore. So those are some of the highlights for me, I guess.
Yeah, you should definitely get yourself down to Ruhr. We went last year and this year, and it was awesome fun. This year in particular, it was a really good trail down there.
Okay. All right. We also have some more questions that we want to add before we move on to some other questions. And that Dennis and Jean, so we rode back into the car, and obviously we had this idea with this little wrap up and debrief, and they put in a few questions of their own, of course. Dennis wants to know which tool or equipment, in your view, is indispensable for a successful Grischa trail ride or any multi-day alpine adventure. You've mentioned the rain jacket with a hood.
Dynaplugs and CO2 cartridges. I would say if you get a puncture, the last thing you want to do is have to fiddle around trying to plug it with some inferior plug. I've got these Dynaplugs. I think they're amazing. You've just got a little tool. You just ram it straight into the tire, pull it out, whack your CO2 cartridge onto the valve, let it go, and you're away in minutes. I think that's a really useful thing to take with you, to be honest.
Absolutely. I prefer to start at home with the prevention of the flats by installing proper tires for the mountains. Also with inserts. We did manage, and we have to be fully transparent here, we did manage first day, first trail, we already had the first flat. But it wasn't me. So that sense.
Yeah, I've never had a flat yet either. But last year, Gianmarco got one.
Yeah, that means next year, the first day, first trail, that will be you.
But the other thing that springs to mind is some sort of navigation device.
Yeah,
we met some guys that were there for the first time this year, and they were trying to navigate their way around with the paper map we were given. And they were struggling because it's so hard to know you're on the right trail, and you can't just keep getting that paper map out all the time. Some people use Garmin's. I've been using Komoot app on my phone, which is pretty good when you consider the price difference between buying a Garmin and paying for a Komoot subscription.
Fully agree. That's actually one of the takeaways for us for our next participation, is that we will also be using much more technology because again, it's all about the time management, right? Because on the one hand, yes, if you have let's say a diverse group in terms of speed or fitness, then there is more time to consult the map. But especially when you're time crunched and you need to get somewhere on time, you don't want to be stopping all the time to double check if you're now really on the right trail and all that. So I guess a tool like Komoot or Garmin can be really, really helpful, especially if you're all riding with GPS anyway. So it seems like a no-brainer. Okay, another question. Of course, we have to ask Gene. He wants to know what kind of cool content we can expect from you this time around.
Yeah, probably a day of suffering on day 3. Yeah, I'm probably going to produce 3 videos, one for each day. As always, try and keep them short. Didn't manage to keep them quite as short as I normally do last year, but that was just because so much happened and it was so much fun. But yeah, I mean, if you want to see the story, see what happened, see what sort of scrapes we got ourselves into, then you should definitely come and check out the videos.
Cool. I guess we went through all of the inputs that we got, and before we wrap it up for real, is there anything else you wanted to say?
Yeah, if you want to come watch the videos, that would be absolutely awesome. I produce them so people can see what these experiences are like, and if it tempts you to come and have a go at the Grischa trail ride yourself, you should get yourself signed up for next year. I'll be there. I'm sure Pascal will be there. And we'd love to see you there.
Absolutely. And just before we forget it, where can they find your videos?
So yeah, if you want to come and check out the videos, you can find me on YouTube. Just look up Trail Tracker, and there I should be, right at the top of the search.
Right on. We stick all of those things into the show notes. If you're looking for any more information about the Skids and Giggles podcast, or where you can find more content from us, content from Darren, then you find those in the description. With that, we close it out. Thank you very much for your time. This was really interesting and really cool. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for listening. We really hope you enjoyed this episode.
Pascal and I put a lot of heart and soul into this podcast, and it means a lot to us that you've listened to it. We'd also really appreciate if you shared it with the people that you know and care about. Until next time, Skigglers.